So this is round one of the Jerry Spann Memorial Tournament here in Oklahoma City. This is probably one of my best performances really in classical chess ever. I took down a 1900 and I took down a 2100. As you can see before the tournament, my pre-tournament rating is 1677. So this was a huge event for me. I'm really happy with the way I played for the most part, but I still, have a lot to learn and everything. So anyways, let's just go ahead and get into the game. I started off e4. My opponent opened with the Sicilian defense. I go knight f3. My opponent went g6. He goes for the accelerated dragon. And I play d4, going for the open Sicilian. And after c takes d4, knight takes d4, he goes bishop. I was expecting bishop g7, but he goes knight to f6. And this is just an indicator he's trying to prevent me from playing the Maroczy bind. So had he gone bishop g7, this allows the move c4, and I can set up the Maroczy bind and get a nice clamp on this d4 square. And generally speaking, white has a pretty comfortable position and is fighting for an edge in those positions. So he decides to play knight f6, attacking my pawn, forcing me to play knight c3. And now is the big moment of truth, because really what my opponent should do is he should play d6. He should play d6 and just go back into a regular mainline dragon position. And the game would probably continue something like bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, and let's say castles, and we just play a mainline dragon position, very double-edged. One side will get mated. But instead in the game, my opponent played knight c6, which is just a straight up kind of a blunder, because it allows, say knight takes, say he takes back with the b pawn, I then get this move e5. And then he's either going to have to retreat his knight back to g8, in which case I just get really active development. I can castle quickly, I got a nice attack. Or he has to put his board, or his knight on h5. And let's say I just continue bishop g4, and let's say he plays a move like bishop g7. He's already losing because I have this move g4, which traps the knight. So because of this, he actually has to take with the d pawn. So I go ahead and opt for the endgame. I see that I get this nice development move with the tempo, attacking the pawn on f7. He has to play king to king to e8 to defend f7. And I play f3, just solidifying my pawn on e4. And he plays b5, attacking my bishop. Now I considered bishop e2 or bishop b3. The engine likes bishop e2, which does give me a pretty nice position. I can maybe put my king on f2, bishop on e3, bring my rooks to the center. This is a very, very nice position for white. However, I decide to play bishop b3, just keeping it on the long diagonal, pressuring f7, also preventing his bishop from developing out here, because that exchange would be really bad for him. My opponent decides to grab space with a5, and he's threatening to go a4, winning my bishop. So I play a4 myself, stopping him from playing a5. He pushes the pawn to b4, and I move my knight to e2. He develops his bishop to g7. I develop my bishop to e3, and I've got a really nice position after I long castle. He still has some problems to work out with his king, and I was really happy in this moment. I thought that I had definitely got the better of the opening, and I thought this was a position that I can push him long term in. He goes, I was expecting a move like bishop a6, attacking the knight, just making it harder for me to long castle. But he starts with knight d7. So in some positions, he wants to try to push c5 and c4. He wants to try to trap my bishop. Okay. So I take the opportunity to castle because b2 is also hanging, so I needed to defend b2. Now he goes bishop a6, attacking my knight. I play knight d4. And my point here is after c5, he doesn't have c5, c4, because I actually have knight b5. And on first glance, you might not think that this is so good for white after takes, but this is actually a really good position for white. Let me kind of explain to you. Like, say he tries to just push a4 here. I then have this move bishop to d5, attacking the rook. And say he gets greedy and he tries to take the pawn back. Oh, whoops, I'm now pressuring this knight. So I was really hoping he would go for this line. I thought I had just a clear winning advantage there. But actually what he played was a little bit surprising. I thought maybe he would play a move like rook c8, but he goes knight c5 attacking. And right here, I had a long pause because I had to think, can I actually take this pawn? And it turns out, after some thinking, I actually can't take the pawn. Because after, say, knight takes c6, he takes on b3 with check. I have to take back with the b pawn, and then he plays rook to c8. And I'm going to be losing a piece. So I started with king to d2, or rook to d2, just wanting to double my rooks. And also I was thinking that maybe in some position, I was actually calculating, say, well, what did he, okay, yeah, okay, we'll just go into that. So he did go bishop to e5, and I was wanting to make knight take c6 work, thinking that I could block with my rook, you'll see, but it still doesn't work, because I noticed that after he plays rook c8, my initial plan was to just go rook c2, but it actually doesn't work anymore, because after I recaptured with the pawn, it vacates this square, and he can play bishop to d3. And uh-oh, I am just losing an exchange here. So I was like, oh, darn it, I messed this up. I can't actually take the pawn still. So I decide, okay, I wanted to play this, but I don't want to have to worry about a position where he takes the pawn. So I decided to just play this prophylactics moves b3. He goes f6, trying to make room for his king, because at some point he will probably take and then put his king on f7. I double rooks. He does finally take the bishop, and I take back with the knight because I want to put a piece on the c5 square. I'm also threatening to infiltrate here. So he plays this move, which is actually kind of, the engine doesn't like this, but I think this was kind of an intelligent move, because I really wanted to just drop my rook in here immediately, but I was actually scared of this move bishop to d6, and I was afraid that my rook was getting trapped here, and I would have to play captures, sacrifice the exchange. And apparently I misevaluated this position, and this position is actually really, really good for white. But in the game, I thought, why do I need to take a risk and sacrifice the exchange when I felt like my position was just already good? So I just bring my knight back to d4, pressuring the pawn, trying to see if I can get him to go forward, and then maybe planting my knight here or here. He plays this move, just attacking this, and also if I move my knight, like say I try to play knight to e6, he can just capture my bishop. So I decided to move my bishop back to f2. He plays rook c8 finally, maybe looking to play c5. I play knight back to b3, just offering him a trade of the bishop. I thought that if we trade bishops right here, I just have a better position. I have control over the d file. And say he plays a move like this, I can just start bringing my rook in. He can try trading, but I would just be positionally dominant here. So instead he goes back to c7, trying to discourage me again from putting my rook into d7. I go knight c5, just trying to get rid of this bishop. And I saw that after bishop c4, b3, bishop back to f7, that I had this move, knight to a6. Now his bishop is attacked. If he goes bishop b8, I was thinking that I could even just take and just start infiltrating. So he tries to go bishop to d6 to stop the infiltration, and I decide to just trade off the bishop. And this is a really good trade for me because, as you will see, he has to take the bishop. I take back with the knight. I get the classic good knight versus bad bishop endgame. His bishop is not really targeting anything. My knight controls some good squares. So I was really happy about this. He plays h5, lashing out. Hard to make a move. I finally get my rook into d7. He goes h4. I just played g4. Main reason is I want to stop rook h5 ideas for him to maybe try to get his rook into the game. He goes f5. I go rook a7, just attacking the pawn. And at this point, my position is just so overwhelming that I'm going to go ahead and just fly through the next several moves because I'm clearly just winning here. He tries to get his rook off the back, or his king off the back rank. Maybe it'll find home on g7 and then he can connect his rook. I put my other rook to the file, plays protects. I take, he takes, I take back. And right here, this is another good moment to note, is I do have this good move g5, just restricting his king even further. But I don't end up going for that because I just like the idea of keeping his rook away from the h5 square. So I just double here, just pressure here. He defends with his king. I play this move the engine doesn't like, deflecting the king. I was hoping that I can maybe figure out some kind of mating net here, but yeah, I was just a little bit too optimistic. I don't really have anything. And eventually we're going to start simplifying a little bit. I attack his pawn. And we get this position where I'm only up a pawn, so I did give up some of my advantage. But this is still a pretty good game. The only thing I really have to worry about is the c2 square. So like a conjunction like this would be really good for black, and I have to make sure at all costs that I avoid that. If I can avoid that, I should be able to win this position. Gives me a check, attacks my knight. I move my knight. He attacks my knight again, and now I can actually take on h4 because if he takes my knight, I take his bishop. Nice little tactic there. We play some more moves, and eventually he has no way to defend this pawn, so I take this pawn. He attacks my knight. Now I just have to make sure that I don't get this knight trapped. And I play this move c3. The idea is that if he takes the knight, I have this check, and then I'm just winning the rook. He doesn't fall for it. He goes forward, and I have to be careful. Bring my knight back. Tuck my king away. He does win the pawn on h2, but this c5 pawn is going to end up dropping, and there's not really much he can do. Right, I'm threatening to just come here and take it, even if he tries to hold on to it. So he tries to play a little bit actively, but eventually I'm going to start just pushing my pawns. The game does get a little bit interesting though here because I end up blundering my knight. I just started, I guess, feeling the nerves because I knew this game was about over. He takes my knight. I attack his bishop, and I just want to start pushing these pawns forward. Even though I was upset about blundering my knight, I was pretty confident that I could still win this. just because I have the 3 connected pass pawns. And now the moment of truth. He defends the bishop with his king, and I decide, hey, why not just sacrifice the exchange? Let's make this win easy. And b4, and I'm just going to start pushing these pawns, and right here he actually blundered because I can just push this pawn forward and there's no way to stop it. Although the position, even the position here, is completely winning for white, even though I'm down the piece. So I was really happy to win my first round against Jason. This really had started my tournament, and even though I didn't play a perfect game, I was really happy with my in-game technique, the fact that I punished him really hard out of the opening, and overall I felt like I had a good control over the position. I had a good idea of like the different tactics in the position. There wasn't really a moment where I felt like I was losing foot in the game against a higher rated opponent, so that made me feel really hopeful for the tournament. And I think I will go ahead and upload my other rounds, and hopefully you've learned something from these games, or hopefully they've inspired you. I'd love to hear from your comments. So thank you so much. You guys all have a nice day.